Steps of Ssb Interview. Screening test. The screening test is the first stage of the Ssb Services Selection Board interview process for candidates who have applied for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. It is a written test that aims to assess the candidate's ability to think and respond under pressure, and to evaluate their aptitude and general knowledge. The screening test is conducted on the first day of the Ssb interview and comprises two parts: the Officer Intelligence Rating (OIR) test and the Picture Perception and Discussion Test (PPDT). The OIR test consists of a set of multiple-choice questions that evaluate the candidate's verbal and non-verbal reasoning abilities. It is a timed test and candidates are given a limited time to complete it. The Picture Perception and Discussion Test (PPDT) is a test of the candidate's ability to observe and interpret an image. In this test, candidates are shown a hazy picture for 30 seconds and then asked to write a story about it in 3 minutes. After that, the candidates are divided into groups and each group is shown a clear image for 30 seconds, followed by 4 minutes of discussion among the group members. During the discussion, candidates are expected to come up with a common story based on the image. Candidates who clear the screening test are eligible to continue with the Ssb interview process, while those who do not clear the screening test are sent back home on the same day. The screening test is designed to be a tough test of a candidate's ability to think on their feet and assess their basic knowledge and aptitude. Psychological test. The psychological test is an important part of the Ssb Services Selection Board interview process for candidates applying for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. This test aims to assess the candidate's personality, emotional intelligence, and mental fitness for the job. The psychological test is conducted over 2 days and consists of 4 tests: the Thematic Apperception Test (TAT), the Word Association Test (WAT), the Situation Reaction Test (SRT), and the Self-Description Test (SD). Thematic Apperception Test (TAT). In this test, candidates are shown a series of pictures and asked to write a story based on what they see. This test assesses the candidate's ability to think creatively, their emotional intelligence, and their decision-making skills. Word Association Test (WAT). In the WAT, candidates are shown a set of 60 words, one after the other, for 15 seconds each. After each word is shown, candidates are asked to write a sentence that comes to their mind related to the word. This test assesses the candidate's ability to think quickly and their use of language. Situation Reaction Test (SRT). In the SRT, candidates are given a set of situations and asked to write their response to the situation in a few sentences. This test assesses the candidate's ability to think rationally and handle stressful situations. Self-Description Test (SD). The SD test is a questionnaire that asks candidates to describe themselves, their strengths, weaknesses, achievements, and personal goals. This test aims to assess the candidate's self-awareness, their level of self-confidence, and their ability to express themselves. The psychological test is conducted by a psychologist and is designed to evaluate a candidate's mental fitness, emotional stability, and overall personality. The results of the psychological test are taken into consideration during the final selection process for candidates applying for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. Group Testing Officer (GTO) tasks. The Group Testing Officer (GTO) tasks are an important part of the Ssb Services Selection Board interview process for candidates applying for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. These tasks assess the candidate's leadership qualities, communication skills, and ability to work in a team. The GTO tasks are conducted over 2 to 3 days and consist of various activities that are designed to test the candidate's leadership, decision-making, and communication skills. Some of the GTO tasks include Group Discussion (GD). In the GD, a group of candidates are given a topic and asked to discuss it among themselves for a given period of time. The GTO assesses the candidate's ability to express their views, their listening skills, and their ability to work in a group. Group Planning Exercise (GPE). In the GPE, candidates are given a hypothetical problem that requires a solution. The candidates are required to come up with a plan of action and execute it within a given time frame. The GTO assesses the candidate's leadership skills, decision-making ability, and their ability to work under pressure. Group Obstacle Race (GORE). In the GORE, candidates are divided into groups and asked to complete a physical obstacle course within a given time frame. The GTO assesses the candidate's physical fitness, team spirit, and leadership skills. Lecturette. In the lecturette, candidates are given a topic and asked to prepare a short speech on it. The candidate then delivers the speech in front of the group. The GTO assesses the candidate's communication skills, confidence, and ability to express their thoughts. The GTO tasks are designed to evaluate a candidate's ability to work in a team, their leadership qualities, and their decision-making abilities. The results of the GTO tasks are taken into consideration during the final selection process for candidates applying for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. Personal interview. The personal interview is an important part of the SSB, Services Selection Board, interview process for candidates applying for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. The personal interview is conducted by an interviewing officer and aims to evaluate the candidate's personality, motivation, and suitability for the job. The personal interview is usually conducted on the third day of the SSB interview and lasts for around 30 minutes. The interviewing officer, IO, asks the candidate questions related to their personal life, academic background, work experience, and hobbies. Some of the areas that are covered in the personal interview include personal information. The IO asks questions related to the candidate's personal life, family background, and upbringing. The IO may also ask questions related to the candidate's personal habits, lifestyle, and values. Academic background. The IO asks questions related to the candidate's educational qualifications, academic achievements, and future aspirations. The IO may also ask questions related to the candidate's academic interests and strengths. Work experience. The IO asks questions related to the candidate's work experience, if any. The IO may ask questions related to the candidate's job responsibilities, achievements, and challenges faced in the workplace. Hobbies and interests. The IO asks questions related to the candidate's hobbies and interests. The IO may also ask questions related to the candidate's participation in extracurricular activities. The personal interview aims to evaluate the candidate's personality traits, motivation, and suitability for the job. The IO assesses the candidate's confidence, communication skills, attitude, and overall demeanor. The results of the personal interview are taken into consideration during the final selection process for candidates applying for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. Conference. The conference is the final stage of the SSB, Services Selection Board, interview process for candidates applying for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. The conference is conducted by the SSB board members and aims to evaluate the overall performance of the candidate during the interview process. The conference is usually conducted on the fourth day of the SSB interview and lasts for around 30 minutes. The candidate is required to stand in front of the board members while they discuss the candidate's performance during the interview process. During the SSB interview, candidates are also required to undergo a series of physical tests, including a medical examination, to ensure that they are physically fit to serve in the armed forces. The medical examination is an important part of the SSB, Services Selection Board, interview process for candidates applying for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. The medical examination aims to evaluate the candidate's physical and mental health to ensure that they are fit for the job. The medical examination is usually conducted on the fifth day of the SSB interview. The candidate is required to undergo a series of tests to evaluate their physical and mental health. Some of the tests that are conducted during the medical examination include physical examination. The candidate is required to undergo a physical examination to evaluate their physical fitness. The doctor examines the candidate's eyesight, hearing, teeth, height, weight, and other physical attributes. Laboratory tests. The candidate is required to undergo laboratory tests to evaluate their blood pressure, blood sugar levels, and other vital parameters. The laboratory tests also include urine and blood tests. Psychological assessment. The candidate is required to undergo a psychological assessment to evaluate their mental health. The doctor evaluates the candidate's mental health through a series of tests, including the Rorschach ink blot test, the Bender-Gestalt test, and the MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. The medical examination aims to ensure that the candidate is physically and mentally fit for the job. The results of the medical examination are taken into consideration during the final selection process for candidates applying for entry into the Indian Armed Forces. If the candidate is found unfit during the medical examination, they are disqualified from the selection process. Overall, the SSB interview is a rigorous and challenging process that tests not only a candidate's knowledge and skills but also their personality, character, and leadership potential. Candidates who are selected after the SSB interview undergo a rigorous training program before being commissioned as officers in the Indian Armed Forces.